Hello and welcome to another edition of Ask the Experts here on 570 News Radio. I'm joined today by Faisal Susiwala, recently named as the #1 REMAX agent worldwide in terms of sales volume and number of homes sold. He's also the author of the book, The Real Deal, Billion-Dollar Real Estate Broker. Welcome back to the show, Faisal, and thanks for giving us some of your time today.
Thanks for having me on, Brock.
Listeners, if you are interested in any of the information we discuss over the next hour, please reach out to Faisal. You can start your journey at homeshack.com. You can also call Faisal directly, 519-624-5555, or by email, Faisal@homeshack.com. So, Faisal, exciting news this coming Wednesday. Going to be a big day when it comes to what we've been talking about over the last few months. After three consecutive rate cuts, the Bank of Canada is going to be making its next decision on October the 23rd. What are you expecting? What do you think is going to be coming down the pipe?
Well, I'm expecting that the rates will drop at least by 0.5%, so 50 basis points. That's October 23rd, followed by another 50 basis points or 0.5% on December the 11th. So I expect before the year is up, we're going to have a nice little Christmas present, and it's going to be 1% less than where we're at today, which is welcome news by first-time home buyers or any buyer that's entering the market, any buyer that was sitting on the sidelines. But it's even more welcome news for homeowners who have been waiting for this to happen so they can start realizing the value come back on their homes from the sudden drop that we've experienced from 2022 highs. So I think all in all, things are starting to move in the right direction now, and people are becoming far more confident. Also, a lot of the rule changes with CMHC allowing higher debt on their cap of $1 million is now raised to $1.5 million. So all of that coming together is going to make a very good climate for buyers to jump in, and also for those who are afraid to sell, to now seriously look at selling either now in the next 30 to 45 days, or put a pin in it until March of next year and get on the listings at that point.
When you've been talking to buyers and sellers, how are they feeling right now? Is it still that sort of hesitation? Are they waiting to see what happens next? Or are there those people that are really ready to start getting into the action?
Well, they're starting to feel like, okay, they've sat on the sidelines long enough. And if they don't buy now, it's that FOMO, fear of missing out on the opportunities that are there, and then having to pay a premium in the spring market. So typically, we will see an uptick in the market in the spring anyways. Add a couple of rate reductions, or maybe 3 or 4 rate reductions by then, we're going to see a surge in values. There's no question. And those who are waiting are probably going to regret waiting until that time, because, and we've talked about this several times, that while the rates are high, it's still beneficial to jump into the market, because that 8 to 10 or $15,000 you may pay in interest over the next 3 years doesn't even compare to the $150,000 or $100,000 savings that you're going to have on the home. For every 0.5% rate drop, you can expect to see anywhere from 3 to 5% increase in property values. So on the average price of a home in our region, that's $40,000 to $50,000, and that's a significant increase in property values as a result of the rate drops.
Okay. And we know that as we said, there were those three drops already. You're saying most likely going to be a fourth, maybe even a fifth as we head into the new year. We know that this is following. So the U.S. Federal Reserve, they had made a decision to cut rates by about 0.5% as well. Do you pay much attention to what happens south of the border? Does it have an impact on what goes on here in Canada?
It absolutely does. And I think we are ahead of the curve here right now. And we were playing catch up. They were very aggressive with their rate cuts. Now we are taking the lead on this. And I think we're going to continue taking the lead. The economists of most of the banks are in alignment to say that by the end of 2026, we could be seeing 2.2 to 2.5% on the prime Bank of Canada rate. So that is a pretty good guidance for us to look at. And we're seeing the results of that. Again, it's not really in anyone's best interest to wait at this moment. If they're thinking about buying, this is definitely the time to buy. If you're thinking about selling, it's all relative unless you're selling and not buying again. If you're selling and not buying again, then wait until next year. Wait until March or April, and you will see an uptick in the market. But if you're going to wait for that extra, 25 or $30,000 for your home by waiting until next March or April, you're going to also pay that for the next home you buy. So it's all going to be a wash anyways.
Good information. And when you take a look at the local market right now, is it still that sort of that there's still some hesitation, or what's I mean, normally we've talked about this in the past that this time of year, maybe 3 or 4 months ago might have been those parents looking to buy homes for their kids going into college or university. Are we still seeing those kinds of things happening right now?
Yeah, we are. We're starting to see that the hesitation is starting to go away and the confidence is starting to take over. People are thinking that, okay, this is a good time. Now, remember, all the bad news is still not out of the market. There are still people that are struggling with their renewals. They're not able to refinance because the cost of refinancing is far too high. So there's still some negativity in the market. We haven't quite seen the fallout from that yet. Although we expected it to be much worse, I think people have come up with solutions, extending their amortization, refinancing, taking a second mortgage just to get through this storm, and then hopefully being able to blend all that into one mortgage, coming into lower rate season next year.
And I'm glad to hear that because I know we were talking, 6, 7 months ago where you were concerned about a lot of the customers that you've worked with for years finding themselves in dire straits, and we talked at that point about how do you find ways to be creative to come up with a solution to it's a short term. I know it's a pain and it's a big pain, but it's short term, and this we as we said before, this too shall pass, and it sounds like that's starting to happen.
Yeah, and when everybody is hesitating, take action because when you take action, there's less competition. And I've always found in my career that I've gone against the grain and I've come out ahead that way.
So at the same time, Faisal, inflation, it's fallen in line. Back in August, it had dropped to 2%. There were some rumblings that it was going to get down below 2%, and I think we're going to hear that in the next little while. What can you tell us about what's happening there as well?
Well, exciting times for inflation, if we can even say that. We were expecting the September numbers to come in at 1.8. They've actually come in at 1.6, which is fantastic news. And again, makes for a strong case for at least a 0.5%. I dare not say 0.75%, but at least a 0.5% cut next week, October 23rd. So, with the inflation numbers coming down, now that's, we're seeing gas prices are down, so that's contributing to that. So there's a lot of factors. It's not just housing that contributes to inflation. And I think housing was being used to control inflation, but we're seeing a lot more avenues where we're seeing values dropping. So gas is down by 5.1% right now. Even shelter costs has started coming down a little bit, and we're seeing that's all contributing to the inflation numbers. I would say that we're going to continue seeing inflation drop. The target was 2%. We beat it. So that's great. Now that's the reason we're going to see interest rates drop as well.
And you bring up a good point. That idea of we've seen it. If you've been looking at the price of the pumps the last little while, the price has been going down there as well too. It may be a little bit slower when it comes to things like cost, when it comes to groceries, produce, those types of things. But there's been a lot of other outside factors that have been happening there as well too. And we've talked about this as well too, the rental market, and it's been growing, but maybe not as kind of blustery as it was before. And that's sort of eased off a little bit as well.
Yeah, and the inflation, the one of the contributors to this inflation was that corporate profits. So everyone's got to start taking a little bit less. so that everybody can eat, literally, so everybody can eat with these grocery prices and whatnot. So if they could start, dropping their margins a little bit, you don't need to make 20 and 30% on everything it's selling. You make 12, 15%. It allows for a more balanced economy. And we're starting to see that now where everyone is starting to say, even trades have started coming down. Builders have started taking less money, and we're starting to see movement in those areas now.
Great information, and it's always important for us to touch base on those things when we get Faisal on the show. Listen, we're coming up on a break here on Ask the Experts. When we come back, getting some updates on the housing crisis and if it's working in Collingwood, could it work here? Stay with us here on 570 News Radio. Welcome back to the show. My guest today is Faisal Susiwala, recently named as the #1 REMAX agent worldwide in terms of sales volume and number of homes sold as well. He's also the author of the book, The Real Deal, Billion-Dollar Real Estate Broker. Listeners, if you'd like a chance to chat with Faisal yourself, start by going to homeshack.com. You can also call Faisal directly, 519-624-5555, or through email, Faisal@homeshack.com. And you might find yourself behind Faisal on a bus. I was just the other day, I was pointing to my wife and I said, there's my friend Faisal right there. And all the information, if you see him on the back of the bus, that's a great spot to see him. I don't know if he's as big as that in real life, but it's pretty interesting how they've got that set up. Listen, Faisal, lots of discussion lately about the housing crisis. So maybe I was hoping that you could maybe walk us through some of the biggest issues, I suppose, when it comes to what's really impacting that crisis as well.
Yeah, so let's look at the variables here. So first of all, the obvious one is supply versus demand. There hasn't
Yeah.
been enough homes for the growing population. Then we look at high construction costs. Rising materials and labor slow the new builds. Then we look at speculation. So investors drive up prices, and then the locals struggle to buy because they're gobbling up that inventory. Of course, interest rates, as we were talking the last session, high rates mean pricier mortgages. So that keeps people out of the market and causes a crisis because they don't have access to housing at affordable pricing. And then government policies, some of the rules limiting new development, the bureaucracy, the slowdown in approval process, it just keeps people at bay, and it just becomes overwhelming, especially for a small builder. The cost involved, the time involved, it just bleeds them dry by the time they get to shovel in the ground. And then rental pressure, of course, there's few affordable rental push that pushes that people to buy. So if you're not seeing enough rental out there, then you have to buy, which then causes a crisis in the economy as well, and the housing inventory. And lastly, we're seeing an aging population. They don't want to leave their existing homes because it's very costly to move, and
Mm.
they're not seeing the value. So they're holding on to their homes. Higher interest rates have dropped the values, so they don't want to not realize their tax-free gain. So they're just holding on, and that's keeping young people out of the game as well. So there's a lot of variables here, not just, supply versus demand, which is the obvious one, but all these other factors are causing this crisis as well.
If we zoom in for a bit on that idea of the aging population and we feeling that we've talked about this before that the young folks are really struggling to get their foot in the door. In you've talked about this as well too, looking at the number of the people that you're dealing with second and third generation of the same family. Is there a hesitation? You talked about this, there's got to be a point, I would think, though, where the older population finally says, "Look, I can't maintain the house. Even getting a property manager in, all of these kinds of things. I need to look at maybe moving into a retirement home or moving into, a rental unit." I would think that those are some tough discussions sometimes.
They are tough discussions, but the options are so limited for seniors and people that are trying to get out of these homes. And if you look around us, the developments that are occurring, a lot of them are stacked townhomes with many, many steps. a smaller sort of footprints. And grandma still wants to have Thanksgiving dinner at her house and wants to accommodate the family. So she wants that dining room. So the missing sector in the marketplace is that hybrid bungalow, condo, living where there's still a little bit of a garden, some autonomy for these folks that don't want to give it up and don't want to live in a concrete jungle, don't want to take an elevator into their home. So the challenge there, though, is the cost of land. To
Right.
create a bungalow, the footprint of that, and not go 4 stories high becomes cost prohibitive at the value of the land and the cost of development charges per unit. So builders, and I don't blame them at all, need to create higher density on a smaller footprint in order to create housing, which helps the crisis. But then those folks that are living in these 3,000 square foot homes, two people living in there are saying, well, yeah, we'd love to get out of here and have one level living, but find us a bungalow. So where do they go? They have to move, if they're in our region, they have to move to Woodstock, Ingersoll, communities that are further away, which
Right.
then isolates these seniors from their families. And they're saying, well, okay, now I'm 45 minutes away in the winter. My kids don't come to visit. They don't come to visit when you're a mile away. Um, are they going to come and visit you when you're, 75 kilometers from them? So these
Yeah.
are all and I hear these issues every single day. And I can't help but to say to my clients that I've known for 30 years that, yeah, you know what? Let's just stay here. Let me help
Right.
you with a lawn guy. Let me help you with a snow removal person. Let me get you a maintenance person that when something goes. So we're giving solutions, kind of creating a condo lifestyle in their
Right.
freehold environment so that they can just have somebody on speed dial to take care of these things. So this challenge is going to continue until we see more development cater to seniors. And seniors are not ready to say, that's it, we're going into an apartment building because they just can't get used to that lifestyle. And quite honestly, those who have done that are miserable in that lifestyle.
And that's a great point because and you still want that sense of ownership or sense of this belongs to me. And you bring up that great point, and we've talked about this before too, where the government policies can get in the way. But then along comes Collingwood, so another community here in Southern Ontario. They've made this decision to take more of a proactive approach, I guess you can say. Maybe you can walk us through what's going on in Collingwood, and is that something we could see happening here in the region as well?
Yeah, Collingwood is very progressive, and I was quite impressed by learning that they are offering $10,000 to their residents to create housing. So if you
Oh,
have a home and you can put in a unit in your basement or add a secondary dwelling in your backyard, they're going to give $10,000 as long as you're creating this additional unit. And that's what that was from $5,600 that they were offering before. Now you must keep that unit as a rental for at least 5 years. And I think this is a really good mandate. If more municipalities started taking on this incentive program, for example, the seniors, they may not have the funds to put an egress window in, to put that
right.
little kitchenette in the basement, to have maybe a separate entrance or some partition walls put up. But with that $10,000, two things happens. It helps those folks stay in their home. Secondly, it gives them some additional income. And lastly, it creates an incentive for them to create more housing. So props to Collingwood for doing what they're doing, and I sure hope that other municipalities will follow this whole ARU initiative, additional residential unit initiative that Collingwood is offering.
And it could be done here. We know that you were talking already, but these 3,000 square foot homes that back that were built back in, let's say, the 80s and 90s. There's an opportunity there, but we need someone to kind of catch up with that and say, okay, here's maybe you're not ready to make the step just yet, but hey, if we incentivize this, it's going to help spur things along, and that might free up. That frees up those spaces that it solves a number of problems if you're able to make those things.
It
It's
does,
a
and
quick
you know
fix.
what? Like Collingwood has gone to the extent of even creating a design gallery where you can go in, sort of click and have a design. So it streamlines the process. The municipality is on side to fast track these approvals, as opposed to what we're facing on a regular basis, the challenges we're facing in the red tape, not getting a return phone call, trying to get an email response. It's such a broken system, and shame on everybody that works in this region for not taking a proactive approach to getting these approvals through faster. And I've been on your show, and I've poo-pooed on these politicians and the staff and whatnot. I get a phone call back, say, "Oh, we'd like to hear your concerns." I return their phone call, and I don't get a call back. So if they're listening, call me and I'll tell you what's wrong with your system, and hopefully you guys can work on fixing it.
There you go. And we've had this discussion before as well. Faisal is not interested in running for any sort of local spot because he's a busy man as it is. And actually that tees things up nicely because we're going to take a quick break. We're going to get an update from the 570 News Center. But when we come back, Faisal is going to walk us through his morning routine. We're going to hear what happens in Faisal's day first thing in the morning. Stay with us here on 570 News Radio. Welcome back to the show. My guest today, Faisal Susiwala, recently named as the #1 Remax agent worldwide in terms of sales volume and number of homes sold as well too. If you'd like a chance to chat with Faisal yourself, you can start by going to homeshack.com. You can also call Faisal directly 519-624-5555 or through email faisal@homeshack.com. Faisal, I'm hoping to pull back the curtain a little bit here, find out a little bit more about how you set yourself up for success. A person's morning routine tells us a lot about them. And I know you get asked about this quite a bit. Maybe you can walk us through what's it like? What's Faisal's morning rituals all about?
Well, it's interesting. So, like most people, my morning routine used to be, you know, grabbing my phone first thing in the morning, scrolling, and I just found that it was like what am I looking for here? Am I looking for some sort of affirmation? Am I looking to see how many likes I got on a post, or what is it that I'm after? And I realized that, you know what, that was throwing my day off, and I wasn't getting out of bed with a positive mindset. So what I've done is I've changed that over the last couple of years, where I follow this 1 hour rule.
Right.
So it's a screen-free morning. I set a time for coffee, family, reading, like non-digital time, no screen time, no phone. And this phone-free start just allows me to relax in the morning. And it's actually it was a study done by Stanford that is backed by neuroscience, which improves your actual mental clarity. Your decision making becomes far more sharper than it would be if you were bogged down with all that digital noise first thing in the morning. It heightens your memory. It just gives your brain that volume that it needs in order to face the day. And for me, that was a game changer because I had a slower, intentional morning, which gave me that thoughtfulness throughout the day. And I wasn't sort of hyper or or chasing or running as hard as I was when I was wasting time on the screen, going down that rabbit hole, watching nonsense videos. Some of it's informative, so I'm not going to say it's all bad. But I think you have to be take that little bit of time for yourself first thing in the morning. I think it just allows for a healthier day overall.
I like that point that you started off with that questioning yourself. What am I looking for? Right. And I often think about, with our phones, for example, rarely do we use our phones for anything other than consuming information. It's not necessarily a way for us to be creative or to be putting things out there. But I really like that point. Are you a creature of habit? Are you getting up the same time most days, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, I try to get up. I will say this, and I'm gonna get in trouble for this, but I'm not an early riser. But
Uh-huh.
I stay up late at night. You've probably seen
Right.
me send emails to you at 1 in the morning with things that we're going to talk about and whatnot. But it's because that's sort of my schedule. I work a lot with clients who are not available during the day. They finish work
Mhm.
at 5 or 6. So now I'm dealing with their listings, their offers, their showings between 6 and 9 p.m. sometimes. So for me, by the time I get home, unwind, it can take a couple of hours to really shut down. And, I need my sort of peaceful time in the evening before I go to bed because I don't want my mind racing. So then I let that allow me to sort of sleep in a little bit longer. So I'm not a 5 a.m. wake up guy and that type of thing. But I think if you know you're going to be working late, then allow yourself that opportunity to sleep in as well.
Right. You've got to know your limits and know your balance. Like you said, if you're getting home at 9 or 10 o'clock, it's not like you can hop in bed and everything just shuts right off. You need a little bit of downtime, and we get that as well too. That and I'm glad that you've talked about that sort of being intentional about things and being intentional about not having that phone on and giving yourself time to sort of get set up in the morning. I would think at the same time too, there must be other habits that you've developed in your business life and in personal life as well too. That you talked about these habits as well from that successful people who maybe they don't want to work that hard, and if you can find out a way where you're working smarter, not harder. That takes us a long way down the road. What are some habits that you've instilled in yourself?
Well, it's interesting again, I've been doing this for 36 years now. And I'll tell you in the beginning, it was that nonstop grind, just chasing that, on that mouse wheel and just running all the time. And I realized probably a little bit later than I should have that is not smart. I'm working very hard and not accomplishing as much as I could. So I did the opposite, which was started prioritizing my tasks. I focused only on what matters the most and I skipped the rest. So whatever could be delegated, I delegate. If it's not important to have my attention, then I'm not going to pay attention to it. Automation has been a game changer.
Oh,
With
for sure.
technology, with the evolution of everything that we have available today, embracing it, adopting that into your daily life, allowing it to like don't be afraid of it. I'm a little bit of a dinosaur. Fax machines were technology when I started in the business, and now we have so much technology around us. So use it for your benefit to allow you to have more time and buy some of that time back by investing in the technologies that's available. One very important thing was mastering the power of no. If
Right. Yep.
not, if it's not important, if it's not a useful time um, taker for me, I need to say no. And I've learned to say no respectfully, but
Mhm.
I'm not going to spend my time on things with people that don't really matter. And that's very important to know what matters to you. I will always make time for my family, for my friends, for my clients. But there are a lot of time wasters that are around us. You're always being inundated with email. Oh, I just need 20 minutes of your time because they've got a sales pitch. Why is their urgency to sell you something important enough? And that's why I'm against cold calls coming in, door knocking
Right.
I've never done, because I don't feel that I would like to do that to someone. So why are they going to do it to me? And I stay away from that. A growth mindset. So I
Mhm.
see every challenge as a learning opportunity, and don't look at it as, oh, this is too hard. I'm not going to dive into this because it's too challenging. So take a look at what's out there, what opportunities present themselves, and be selective on what I choose.
Okay.
Prioritizing your self-care, resting up, taking time for yourself, taking that break when you need it, without working harder is very, very important. And then building strong relationships, like with your family, with your friends, with your sphere, with your community, and getting inspiration from people that are surrounding you. That's very important to me as well. And then just learning from failures. Over time, you're faced with so many things that don't work out, and using that as just a stepping stone to being successful, not looking at it as I failed, I'm going to give up. Um, Setting boundaries, very important.
Yeah.
You got to know when to log off. You have to know that, this is too much. This is now affecting my mental health, my physical health, my relationship. So I need to now just say no, and I'm going to log off. So it goes back to saying no when you need to. And probably the most important is, above keeping a positive mindset, is being less negative. Because
Right.
that
Right.
negative voice in your head is way louder than the
Yeah.
positive voice. And we're always being told, we talk, okay, well, just think positive, think positive. I've switched my sermon to my kids to think less negative. Like, let's not be
Right.
pessimist about everything. Let's be positive, but think less negative, because that organically, in turn, will make you think more positively.
These are great, and as you were saying, these are things that they've come to you over a lifetime of experience and working. I like that idea of delegation. I find that that's a tough one in different situations you find yourself in, because in inherent in a lot of people is that, yeah, you feel like you want to be in control, but if you trust the people that are around you and you're able to delegate to them, to give them that opportunity, it's going to come back to you, and it's going to pay dividends in the long run. The other thing that you talked about, the power of saying no, it's nice to be asked sometimes, right? It's nice to be asked to be a part of something, but you also have to know your boundaries, and extremely important for us to look at that. There's only so many hours in the day, and as you said, you've got to give your time to the places that matter the most, and I think you've got it. You've nailed it. You should write another book. That's what I think should happen.
Hey, you never know.
Listen, we'll take a final break here on Ask the Experts. When we come back, we're going to talk about a couple of things, including solar panels and what the best advice is from Uncle Faisal on solar panels. You're listening to Ask the Experts here on 570 News Radio. Welcome back to the show. My guest today has been Faisal Susiwala, also known as the top real estate broker in the world for REMAX. Listeners, if you'd like a chance to chat with Faisal yourself, start by going to homeshack.com. You can also call Faisal directly, 519-624-5555, or through email, faisal@homeshack.com. So, Faisal, we've got a final section here, and a couple of topics that I'd like to just pick your brain about. Solar panels. I've had in the last 6 months, two good friends have made the decision to put solar panels on their homes, and I had thought about it actually probably 10 to 12 years ago. We didn't move ahead with it. But what's your opinion? What should people know when it comes to solar panels and putting them on their homes?
You know, I have, I think the concept is great, but in practical terms, it is awful. I hate it. Don't do it. I don't like it. And I'll tell you why. First
All
of all,
right.
insurance is the issue.
Okay.
So you mentioned your friends. I hope they contacted their insurance company, told them that we're putting solar panels on our home. Not all insurance companies are recognizing coverage for homes that have insurance, have solar panels on them. And there, in fact, some insurance companies will cancel your insurance if you put solar panels on, because it's a third party item that is now being installed on your home. That company owns those panels. You're getting some sort of a contract fee, but you don't actually own those panels for 25 to 30 years. So if you have plans of selling your home, a lot of buyers will shy away. Mortgage companies don't like them because there's a lien put on the home as well, because this is an item that you have now added to your property that doesn't belong to yours, and they can make claim on that.
Correct.
The maintenance issue is the other. if you don't have a brand new roof on your home, and let's say your roof is 10 years old, and you put solar panels on top of that, in 5 years, you need to change your roof. Those
Yeah.
panels have to come off. Now, most of the solar panel companies will cover the cost of removing once and reinstalling once. But
Okay.
let's just say you have another issue and you need to do it again. Now that's your cost. Your shingles blow off and you need to get under that solar panel. Well, they're not going to cover you the second time around. So before you enter into one of these contracts, think about, are you going to be there for the term of that policy, that 20-year term that you've signed up for these solar panels? Are you planning on selling your home? If you're planning on selling, that's another whole, like I get called into many homes that have solar panels. And when I have to sell those homes, insurance is a problem, mortgages are a problem, transferring the solar panel contract is a problem, getting an assignment, it just takes forever. So I don't have a lot of good things to say about it. Personally, I would never do it. Um, Maybe 20 years ago, it was a good time to do it if you purchased it. And the price per kilowatt hour that you were getting from the hydro company was enormous. Like I have a client who put it in about 25 years ago. He
Right.
gets something like 15 or $1,800 per month as
Wow.
for selling electricity back to the grid.
Back. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Today, you're lucky if you get $500 a year or $700 a year. So you've just signed up for such a small amount of money when you think about the negative impact it will have on the value of your home. So hard no on solar panels. All the solar panel guys are going to send me hate mail, but that's okay.
Hey, this is Ask the Expert, and we want Faisals' opinion on these things and finding out what's going on. All right. Another topic. This one, it's a sensitive topic, I would suppose, but it's important for consideration. When the issue of divorce gets into the mix, and you're dealing with real estate, what are some key things to keep in mind for both parties, I suppose, when it comes to that?
I'm dealing a lot again with senior clients who have decided that, look, while we're alive, let us give the inheritance to our kids,
Right.
and let us see them enjoying the fruits of our labor over our life, and instead of waiting until we're dead and then they inherit it anyways. Now, what happens with that? It's great. It gives these kids young kids a fresh start very early in life. But what it could also cause is in issues if, God forbid, there's a divorce.
Hmm.
Now that inheritance may have come to Mrs. Buyer, and Mr. Buyer didn't come in with any money, and all of a sudden there's a divorce happening, and Mr. Buyer says, spouse two, let's call it, says, well, I'm entitled to 50%. This is our matrimonial home. This is where we raised our kids, or this is where we've lived. She says, well, no, my mom and dad gave me this money. This is my money. Well, did you have an agreement in place? If you
Right.
were not married, did you have a cohabitation agreement in place, outlining exactly who came in with what, who's entitled to what? And again, this is a really good question for a lawyer, but I'm talking from a practical perspective, what
Mm.
I see each and every day. It's important to have some safeguards in place. We don't see, sadly, relationships always lasting very long. Everything's great in the beginning. They move in together. They find out, okay, this is not working. They want to go their separate ways. But now there's the idea of the money, and that causes even major issues. So if you're a parent that plans on giving your children the inheritance in advance or giving them the down payment for their first home, have something in writing. It's a difficult conversation to have, but you know what? It's far easier to have that conversation ahead of time than having it when you're right in the middle of this ugly separation or divorce. A family trust is something to look at so that the money that you're giving or the property that's being purchased can be held in a family trust so that it's hands off for any question for your accountant, a great question for your lawyer. based on your financial situation and your always have that consultation. It might cost you $400 or $500 for a consultation, but it'll save you thousands of dollars in legal fees later on when you're trying to resolve this issue.
Good information to have as well too, and as you said, not an easy topic to discuss. We've got a couple of minutes, and maybe another topic that's not always easy. That idea of considering estate planning. It needs to be done. People don't want to talk about it, but you've been at this for a while, and maybe you can walk us through what really the key things are if you're starting to do some estate planning. What should be happening?
I think it's important to, before you talk to lawyers and get accountants involved and all of that, sit down with your loved ones, sit down with your family, understand what their goals are, what their wishes are. Like, and I'm talking about, say, my kids. I would like to know from my kids, listen, if mom and dad are not here tomorrow,
Yeah.
I don't want you and your sister fighting over what's left here. So you tell me what's important to you. Is it the house? Is it the cars? Is it the cottage? Is it, whatever it may be? Is it jewelry? Is it the china? What is it that is important to you that I have? What is it important to you that your mother has? And what would you like to have? Because when you know what their wishes are, that makes it easier because I could leave my daughter a bunch of cars and she's like, "Ah, I hate these cars. I never like driving these cars." And then my son's fighting her saying, well, those were my cars that dad promised.
Right.
So it's important to have those conversations in advance. Write down everything you're thinking, everything you want to, how you want to divide it, who's important to you, where charities. Your wishes may
Right.
be to leave a portion of your estate to a charity. Now, if you haven't made that clear to your family, then that wish is not going to get fulfilled. So again, write everything down before you go to a lawyer, then sit down with the lawyer and then your lawyer will help you navigate and structure how that estate planning is to be done. Speak to your financial advisor. Make sure that, in my case, I own several investment properties, and my wishes are that I don't want those investment properties sold off upon
Mm.
my wife and I not being here, because I feel that it's important for my children to be able to generate income from those properties and leave them some sort of a legacy and a recurring revenue, as opposed to, hey, mom and dad are gone, let's sell this and have a nice big party. So those wishes have to be instilled in an estate plan and you might have to say, well, unless there's extreme hardship on the family, these properties are not to be sold because that is going to revenue generate for them in the ongoing year. So there's a lot of considerations that one needs to make. And again, make the plan with your family, write it down what your wishes are, speak to your accountant, speak to your financial advisor, speak to your lawyer, and don't wait. Like, I'm in my early 50s and I've already got that set up because
Yeah.
again, we just don't know what life has in store for us tomorrow. And it's important that we are at peace before we go.
I like that, and you're right, and it's not an easy conversation, but a really important conversation to have. Faisal, thanks so much for coming on the show again today. It's always a pleasure to have an hour to talk with you,
Thank you, Brock, for having me on. Always a pleasure seeing you as well.
and thanks for giving us some of your time. That was Faisal Susiwala, top real estate broker, recently published author of The Real Deal, Billion-Dollar Real Estate Broker, and someone who knows what he's talking about when it comes to the real estate market. Thanks to you listeners as well for joining us. You've been listening to Ask the Experts here on 570 News Radio.